Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to the FSDC Career Day. I am Steve Koo, a Year 1 student studying Bachelor of Business Administration, Accounting and Finance at the University of Hong Kong. Nice to meet you all today. And I am your MC for this session. Thank you very much for joining us this Saturday morning in this iconic venue, the Grand Auditorium at the HKEX Connect Hall. I hope you won't miss the chance to visit the HKEX Museum of Finance after our speakers sharing today. And it creates a versatile and instantly recognizable financial showcase for promoting the Hong Kong financial market. In this museum, you can get to know the story of Hong Kong's financial markets and HKEX and what the future may hold. Understanding that many of you would like to be part of this industry, the Financial Service Development Council organizes every year the FSDC Career Day to provide students a deeper dive into the different jobs and segments within the industry. Before we get to learn from impressive speakers lineup, may I now remind all of you here to please switch your mobile phones to silent mode. Thank you. And also, on the side of the wall, before we dip into the speaker's speech, please scan the QR code on the side of the wall for the information brochure for your references. And also, please follow us on our LinkedIn page for the upcoming events and informations available on the LinkedIn website. And also, for the students here, if you have any questions, please write down your questions on the slips that's been provided and hand it to our panelists. This year, our panelists will review the questions and select some students that ask the best questions, and we have prepared some gifts for those students who gave the best questions. Without further ado, may we now invite Mr. Lawrence Lee, Chairman of the FSDC, to give us the opening remarks. Mr. Lee, please. A round of applause, everyone.
Good morning. I've always thought, being the first speaker of the day, my job is actually quite easy, just to wake everyone up. And to achieve that job, I myself had a very large cup of coffee already, with which I paid with some electronic money. In the spirit of today's event. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Financial Services Development Council's Career Day. As you can see from today's brochure, we have a very strong lineup of speakers. I met some during the pre-session, and I know for sure that it's going to be a great day and that you will hear a lot of insights that will go both to the development of our market and more specifically to the development of your careers. In particular, we will be honored to have the Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury of the Hong Kong Government, Mr. James Lau, joining us later today. I must say, actually, I felt a bit detained by the speakers this morning in the pre-session. I actually wanted to come out and speak to you guys. I'm not going to give you the usual spill about how meeting youngsters energizes the day, so on and so forth. I'll be honest. I actually wanted to come out and hear from you. I wanted to come out and hear your concerns. I wanted to hear and come out to hear about how you are going to be planning your career. I remember when I was about your age, which I must confess was a while ago, when I was your age, a girlfriend that I had, that I no longer have, put it in a way that I will never forget. And then she said, you know, the trick to understanding someone with whom you have a relationship is to understand his or her needs. The trick is not to talk sense. The trick is not to talk logic. The trick is not to say how well you as a boyfriend can be. The trick is to understand what she wants. And I must say, all the other negativity aside from that relationship, that was one thing I really learned from her. was for the next 20-something years, whatever I approach, whether it's work, whether it's another relationship, and there's a string of failed ones, it's always about the other side. And it is when you think about the other side that the other side feels appreciated, that things get done, and the world goes on. Transplanting that thought to something a bit more recent, yesterday I had to mark up a listed company announcement. I was involved in the litigation for the listed company, in fact, against Tim's shop. It's all public now, we've gone to court, and the listed company needed to put out an announcement. And the announcement was drafted by corporate lawyers. I was the litigation lawyer, so I needed to vet it. And I was looking and I said, hang on, all this was spoken from the perspective of the corporate lawyer, not from the perspective of the investor. The investor doesn't want a 3-page announcement with lots of technical terms, but actually just wants to know what you're trying to say and what he or she needs to know about whether to continue to invest in the company. And that, I go back to what my ex-girlfriend has taught me, which is you always need to look at things from the other side's perspective. With that in mind, that is how the FSDC has always tried to do our career day. We are not here to tell you the great things about Hong Kong as a financial center. I think we can safely assume that if you're here, you're already mostly in agreement that a career in finance is worth exploring. I think we're more here to tell you about the ups and downs, what are the options, some of the details, some of the practicalities. And it is with that in mind that we are running our CV workshop for second year in a row. We're here to help. So without further ado, I would encourage you to listen to what our speakers have to say today, to put that in your calculation as to what kind of financial career you want. Bearing in mind always that I think finance is not about numbers, but it's about how you can serve the other side. It's about what the other side needs and want. And most of all, and that's why we put the CV workshop at the end of the day, because we actually think that's probably the best part of the day, all due respect to all the speakers. And that is, take advantage of the CV workshop, because that's also a chance for you to hear what prospective employers want to see on your CV. So the same thinking. It's just what you put on the CV is as much about you and probably actually a bit more about what the employer wants to see and the way they want to see it. With that in mind, let me wish you a very good day and go forth. The world is your oyster, and finance, I am sure, will prove to be an exciting career for you all. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Ladies and gentlemen, the FSDC is very honored to have the chairman of the Securities and Futures Commission, Mr. Tim Loy, to be our keynote speaker. Apart from this chairmanship at the SFC, Mr. Loy is also a director of the Academy of Finance, a member of the Financial Leaders Forum, as well as a member of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority's Exchange Fund Advisory Committee and Banking Advisory Committee as well. Woof, that's a lot. Today, Mr. Loy will share with us his storied career path and key lessons to learn. Please join me in a big round of applause for Mr. Loy and welcome him to the stage. Mr. Loy.
Lawrence, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's really a great pleasure to see all of you here so early today. I was tasked with this opening session because I bumped into Under Secretary Mr. Joseph Chen one day, and he said, Tim, you have to come and talk at the FSDC Career Day. And I can never refuse Joseph. So here I am, but I have to do some expectation management first, because the title of my chat is My Story, Career Path, and the lessons to learn. I don't really have a very exciting story to tell, but anyway, here it goes. Let me begin by telling you a little bit about my experience in the financial services sector. It all began in London in 1978, when I joined the London office of an international accounting firm called Coopers & Lybrand, or CNL in brief. Now, since you are students, most of you probably have not heard of CNL or Coopers & Lybrand, but at that point in time, that was the largest international accounting firm in the world. Having just completed my MBA study in London, I applied and was very fortunate to be enrolled into CNL then. They used to take about 300 odd article clerks every year. And out of those 300, only a handful, less than 5 from Asia. So I was very fortunate to have been admitted. And CNL, of course, went on and merged with Pricewaterhouse in 1998, and is currently known as PwC, or PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big 4 international accounting firms, and very sizable both in Hong Kong as well as in mainland China. Now, it's commonplace now for students, in particular of your generation, because I read some articles that over your career, you'll probably be going through 6 to 10 different jobs nowadays. But in my days, life was a lot more simple. I stuck with Coopers & Lybrand, or PwC, in the end for the entire my professional career of 40 years. So I retired last year as a partner and senior advisor of PwC. But joining an international accounting firm, and I have to say, because financial services, the spectrum is so broad. It entails bankers, asset managers, people that work in securities and futures industries, professionals, etc. And I represent the professional sector in that respect. So one of these opportunities of working at CNL at those stages was back in 1984. I was given the opportunity to come back to work in Hong Kong. That was quite unexpected, frankly, at that stage, because I was living happily in London, good lifestyle, good work-life balance, and the work wasn't too challenging, so I was really quite happy. And then the chairman of the Hong Kong firm came to London and asked to see people who originated from Hong Kong. So I was summoned to see Mr. Sanford Yung there. And after talking to him for about half an hour, he said, I remember a couple of sentences that he said to me that had a profound impact on me. He said, Tim, your future does not lie here. You definitely have to come back to Hong Kong. So on that note, I came back during the summer, and having talked to my colleagues then, I returned to Hong Kong in November 1984. And I've stayed here since. So frankly, it was at the time when there was quite a lot of uncertainty when I decided to come back to Hong Kong. It was a leap of faith. Hong Kong is going through that era of negotiating or talking about our future, the 1997 issue. And, but equally, I thought opportunities, although there was I was progressing quite smoothly, but you can see that in a place like London, the chances of further advancement is only going to be more limited going forward. So I decided to come back and give it a go. And of course, I always like to come back and work in Hong Kong. But more importantly, I think I sort of hope that during those years, Hong Kong was going to progress very rapidly. And with the opening up of the mainland China economy and going forward, the prospects would be good. And as it turns out, I always tell people that, I'm very fortunate to be able to experience the golden years of Hong Kong's development. And At PwC, I managed to do quite a lot. I was the senior tax partner there, and I ultimately worked on the management board as well. Later on in my career, move on to the other side of the check and balance, which is the governance side. So I became the chairman of the board of directors for many years. But the most important aspect of my work at PwC is I also joined the global board of PwC International. And this is really an eye-opening experience because PwC at that point was a really huge organization, global organization. Over 180,000 employees all over the world, and with revenue of 40 billion US dollars a year. So it was very exciting and interesting to see how the global firm is being operated and managed. All the different issues that need to be negotiated, all the regulatory sort of issues, and the branding issues, the business development side. So it was really quite an eye-opener for me. But more importantly, at PwC, the firm was very mindful of the fact that being such a large organization, and we need to give back to society. So most of the partners, if they had the opportunities, were encouraged to go and give the time to charitable work, government committee work, and also within the profession. I was elected a council member of the Hong Kong Institute of Certified Public Accountants in 1991, and eventually was elected to become its president in 1997. And I play my part in terms of the smooth return of sovereignty to the mainland, to China, as well as putting together a lot of cooperation between HKICPA and CICPA in the mainland. And I also had the opportunity to move into a lot of other government advisory committee work, which broadens my horizon. So that's really my first part of my story. And then when I retired from the firm in last year, all right, the government came knocking on the door and approached me to take on the job of the chairmanship of the Securities and Futures Commission. I took a little while to say yes because I had to think about this. At that point in time, I was okay to accept a new challenge, but I need to understand the role and the responsibility of the job and make sure that I'm up to it. So after a while, I decided to accept the appointment, and here I am. The SFC is a very important organization in Hong Kong. It's the regulator of the Hong Kong securities and futures market. So our main work is really to oversee the operations of the stock exchange and also issues a lot of licenses to brokers, intermediaries, and other professionals. So if you pursue a financial career in Hong Kong, no doubt one day you will also be crossing the pathway of the SFC. In my role as the SFC chairman, we are here to preserve Hong Kong's status as one of the world's international leading financial center. So you could say that our regulatory work aims at one overarching goal, and that is to maintain Hong Kong competitiveness. Now, financial services, as we all understand, is one of Hong Kong's pillar industries and a big part of our economy. Under the law, our key objectives include investor protection and ensuring fair and orderly markets. So it's important for us to maintain the integrity of the market so that investors have the confidence to invest here. This is indeed a very challenging job, nowadays more than ever, but it's also very meaningful. As we all know, the markets are getting more complex and there's a lot of happenings in the world. So as a regulator, we need to keep on top of emerging risks and make sure that we are ready to what comes next. For example, the rapid development of technology has transformed our lives. So apart from making a lot of transactions more convenient, it also brings a lot of risk. Hackers and criminals work full-time to probe cybersecurity systems for weaknesses. So as the market regulator, we need to keep a very close eye on technological advancements and developments and be ready to adopt our rules and regulations when needed. So just to point out another issue that we are watching very closely is global warming and climate change. Now, these represent significant risks for future generations, but they also mean tremendous opportunities for those who can come up with very innovative solutions. We all need to move away from fossil fuels and rely on renewable energy, all good stuff. But the financial industry will have a big role to play here to provide capital and financing to make this happen. So this will be a big topic in the coming years and could have a major impact on your career. Now, in the time remaining, let me just share with you some of my observations, or it's not really lessons to learn. But to start with, as I said, I have a very long career in one single firm. But at the start, you really need to have a willingness to learn and work hard. Find something that you're interested in, and then pursue that. And don't be too short-term. Because I started my career as an auditor, and most of you probably share my same sentiment that that's quite a mundane job. And at the end of it, you have to go through that phase, all right? And then you move on to other stuff. And at the end of, when you're becoming more senior, more competent, and more advanced, your job actually changes quite a lot. You talk to your clients, you understand their problems, then you provide them with solutions, and at the end, if you can really be of help, the sense of satisfaction and pride will be so much, and you'll enjoy your career that much more. But you have to work hard for this, all right? And you have to have that willingness to learn. And this learning is not just on your specific topic. It's really broad knowledge that I'm talking about. Because nowadays, in the professional services at least, it's still very much, there's a lot of human interaction. And therefore, you need to be able to relay yourself, communicate, understand the issues that your clients will have. And to do that, you actually have to have a broader vision and understanding of what's happening in their industry and the world, and be able to talk to them sensibly so that they can relate to you, that you understand what their problems are, and then you as an advisor will be able to help them. So that's very important. During my career at PwC, I also, because of the diversity of the people that I have to work with, different nationality, different cultures, different backgrounds, you have to learn to interact with people. And building good relationships with them is actually very important. And I resonate with what Chairman Lawrence said earlier on, because we always have a motto, is put yourself in the shoes of others. So always look at things from the other side's perspective. Then you'll be able to engage them more purposefully and actually be of more, the value proposition to them will be that much higher. And one of the things that will help you in this area is to focus on your communication skills. Nowadays, to be able to communicate effectively is so important. And I'm not just talking about language capabilities, that's the minimum, but also the way that you communicate and interact with people. You need to display that sense of confidence when you talk to people as well. So believe in what you do and do what you believe in. But in engaging people, I think the eye contact, your mannerism will be so important. So these are all the things that you really need to get a good handle on if you're going to be successful going forward. Always be hungry for more knowledge. In particular nowadays, technological advancement is huge. We're talking about AI, big data analytics, and machine learning, et cetera, et cetera. how all these technology will be able to help you with your work. You always need to stay ahead of the curve and be one of those that can contribute in those areas. Then I think you'll find success will come along quite easily. Now, last but not least, a very important part is that, in particular, in the financial services industry, you need to have a very strong sense of ethics and honesty to work in this industry. Many people are tempted by very short-term profits, but it is those who invest for the long term who will build up the infrastructure and make our economy grow. So if you always act with integrity and honesty, you are already a success as far as I'm concerned. At the SFC, I'm seeing far too many instances of having to sanction people who have breached the law or the regulations or the guidelines. And there's a lot of integrity and honesty issues. And of course, as the SFC, we are committed to dealing with them. But it is important for you students embarking on a financial services career to be absolutely certain on this point. So as a final word, I just want to mention that SFC is marking its 30th anniversary this year. Hong Kong has changed a lot in the past 30 years, and we have made great progress. Our financial industry has found a very special niche as the connector between the mainland and the global financial markets. No other city is as well placed as Hong Kong to do this. Of course, we are experiencing some challenges at the moment, but it is therefore even more paramount and more important that we work together in the financial services sector to make sure that we maintain our competitiveness and ability and our status as an international financial center. In the years ahead, I'm sure the industry, the sector will present enormous opportunities for you, and it will be up to you to make the most of these opportunities to build a successful career for yourself, as well as a brighter future for Hong Kong. So I wish you, on that note, a very happy and long career in the financial services industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lui, for the inspiring sharing and valuable advice. Before I move on to the next MC, let me kindly remind the students here that please fill your questions on the slip. And as I mentioned before, for the best questions, we'll have some gifts prepared for the best questions. And also, the student helpers will come around and collect your slips in a few short while. And now, let me pass the mic to Edison Chan, MC for the next session. Welcome. A round of applause, please.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, everyone. I'm Edison Chan, a Year 3 student studying Bachelor of Science in Quantitative Finance at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Following Mr. Lui's keynote speech, we are pleased to enter the panel discussion session. The first panel is on career in finance. The panel focuses on conventional sectors of the financial services industry, which I'm sure many of you are interested in. Investment banking, insurance, private wealth management are three of such sectors that plenty of students would like to pursue their career in after their graduation. Likewise, of equal importance to the industry is professional services, for example, accountancy, advisory, and consultancy. And also, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to write it down on the paper given and pass it to the student helpers. For this session, we are honored to have the following speakers. First of all, Mr. David Lau, Managing Director at JP Morgan. Mr. Lau has the Hong Kong investment banking operation at JP Morgan, responsible for the bank's global investment banking strategy for Hong Kong clients. He has been a member of the listing committee of the stock exchange since July 2017, and a member of the Policy Research Committee of Hong Kong, FSDC, since 2019. Mr. Lau, please. Next, we have Mr. Eric Ho, Chief Executive Officer of Zurich Insurance Hong Kong. Mr. Ho spearheads all the strategy development to drive Zurich's general insurance and life insurance businesses in the territory towards profitable growth. In his early 38 years of extensive experience in the insurance industry, he has acquired significant accomplishments in leading strategic business initiatives, innovative practices, and market developments. Mr. Ho, please. Also, we have Dr. Francois Monet, Head of Private Banking, North Asia, and Chief Executive, Hong Kong Branch, Credit Suisse. Dr. Monet is Head of Private Banking, North Asia since August 2018. Dr. Monet works closely with the respective market group heads and country CEOs across Credit Suisse Integrated Bank to capitalize on the synergies and business opportunities, drive client interconnectivity across business divisions and markets to further build the bank's strong client franchise in the region. Dr. Monet, please. And we have Mr. Freddie Cho, partner in financial services industry at Deloitte China. Mr. Cho has more than 25 years of professional experience in providing banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions with auditing, regulatory examination, and reporting, risk advisory, and transaction advisory services. Over the last few years, Mr. Cho held various leadership roles such as Priority Accounts Leader, Southern China Leader, and currently Markets and Global Network Leader at the Financial Services Practice of Deloitte China. Mr. Cho, please. Last but not least, we have our panel chair, Mr. Mervyn Chow, partner, Hill House Capital Management Limited. Prior to joining Hill House in 2018, Mr. Chow was the Chief Executive Officer for Greater China and co-head of Investment Banking and Capital Markets Asia Pacific for Credit Suisse. Mr. Chow has also been a member of the FSDC Human Capital Committee since 2017. We are pleased to have him as the moderator to chair this session's discussion. Mr. Chow, please. Let's start the panel one discussion on career in finance. Please welcome our speakers by giving them a big round of applause. May I now pass the floor to Mr. Chow. Thank you, Mr. Chow.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Every year, this is my 5th year at the Career Day, and every year I start off saying this. This is the most exciting event that I'm involved in at FSDC, because the reason is I see every year so many young professionals or people that wants to come over and learn. And I think that's something that's really dear to our heart, that this is an industry that has given us a lot of opportunity. It has given us a lot of challenges, but it is really the path that really shapes us, not really what you want to do at the end of the goal. So I would think that, really excited that everyone's here. We have really a lot of good panels. I go straight into it because every year we run out of time doing it. But before I do that, I would encourage you to just think about, in financial industries, it's all about the clients that we service. And today we have really the different 4 pillars of the service industry. They have different clients that they service. The clients have different functions. And as you think about what you want to do and what your characteristic is, what's your interest in, do pay attention to that, and then think about how you would fit into different places, and that will be probably a key when you will listen to people. So let me start off. We have 4 distinguished guests. So I'll start off this question, which is if you can talk about how do you get into the industry, and second, for the people here, how would it take for them to be able to get into this industry, and then lastly, if you have to name one key success factor for your industry, can you share? So maybe I'll start with David.
Thank you, Mervyn. So I'll start with my background. I did not have a finance background, actually. I studied economics in college before I came back to Hong Kong. I actually started out with private equity, but it was quite a while back, and back then private equity wasn't a cool thing to do. So I moved from private equity into investment banking in 1995, and I have been doing this for 24 years. And I think to the other question that you were asking about how to get into the finance industry, I also run the Junior Resources Program at JP Morgan, and I participated in a lot of the recruiting events. And I think 2 points that struck me the most during many of these the recruiting trips, which is number one, when we meet with many of these students, some of them obviously have done a lot of homework. They know the industry very well. They talk to us as if they were already in the industry. And this is one characteristic which I think would really leave a very good impression when you are doing an interview. Number two is, I think to Lauren's earlier point at the beginning of the session, which is knowing what the other side wants. I think, when we do a lot of research, understand what the job that you are looking for entails, and know what the other side is looking for and how you can help them. And I think that really differentiate a candidate from the others as well. And I think to your third question, if I were going to name one key factor which would help in a successful career, I would go back to the point that Lawrence was making earlier as well, knowing what the other side wants. Because in the finance industry, it's about servicing the clients, it's about knowing what they want, and how to help them to get what they want. So I think that is very important, both for the success in career externally, i.e. servicing the clients, and internally as well, when you are dealing with your colleagues, other departments, because we work together as a team. We need to understand what the other people want, what the other team members want, and also what our clients want, so that we can, together as a team, deliver the results that they want.
Thanks. Eric?
Thank you, Mervyn. Good morning, everyone. So I started my career by accident. Maybe many of us did the same thing. So I try to keep my options open when I graduated 30 years ago. Just like Tim, I have been stuck to one same company till now, so you can guess my age. I was a group management trainee of Swire Group. I kept my options open because it's a group trainee program, and I can rotate among 3 companies. So after the rotation, I chose insurance. I've been staying in this company. I worked through the career path, and I work on the full range of business, for example, retail, personal business, SME, corporate business, and also I manage some joint ventures with the banks. So it's a very exciting career for me. And after, I think, about 23 years, I became the CEO of a general insurance industry company. And then 3 years ago, I also picked up the life business under my management. So it's been a very rewarding career for me in the last 30 years. Yeah. So talking about how to get into the industry. Again, I refer to Lauren's words. So this time, I would like to tell you more about insurance industry instead of you coming to find it. So many of us here, I think we haven't got your first insurance policies yet, right? So many of us don't know what insurance is. Actually, after a few years, I started to know what insurance is. So insurance can be categorized in 2 basic branches. One is life insurance, and the other one is GI insurance. On life side, you have investment products. You have protection products. For example, we were working with the government on the VHIS, Voluntary Health Insurance Scheme. And also we have savings product, like the one, again, with the government working on this, promoting this annuity product. And we have other products on the life. So basically, life idea is to make sure that you can cover up your protection gap, okay? For GI business, it's a range of products. It can be as small as a travel insurance or your private motor insurance, but it could be as big as For example, financial liability for the listed companies. Every listed companies here actually start with IPO process where they need IPO insurance to make sure they avoid some liabilities due to misinformation in prospectus. It's also part of insurance. And of course, in GI business, we have also products covering the political and credit risk. This is very essential for infrastructure risk in big projects like those in Belt and Road. So you can understand that for GI Life, it's a big range of business that's basically helping the economy to sustain and to remain competitive. So that's the purpose of insurance. So I would like to let you understand this so that you can think about whether you really want this kind of job. And I would like to tell you that it's very rewarding, financially. It doesn't mean that you have to be a sales guy, don't get me wrong, because in the insurance industry, we have a broad range of professionals as well. We have investments guy to manage capitals and return. We have risk guys, audit guys, and also we have data analysts. So these are very professional jobs that we need this kind of talents to join insurance. Oh, one more question. Yes, what's the tip for you? So I'm greedy. I would suggest 2 characters. The first one is communicate, just like what Tim said. And the other one is learn. In every stage, you have to learn, know more around yourself and across industry. And you have to communicate with your boss, particularly when you want to make a move. That's my advice.
Thank you. I think that's important. I think as you go through this, each of them are in the service. For example, investment banking, their clients are corporates. For example, in insurance, also there's difference. You can sell to individuals, or you can sell to corporates because they also buy insurance. I think that's one point. When you think about your clients, who do you like to do it, and then different characteristics. I think the other point I think Eric made really important is actually in each industry, there's a broad range of jobs. Every time we think about a job, like an investment banker, you just think about what's happened in the movies, the person that's going to talk to the corporate. But I think that's actually more to it. It takes a lot of different skill set. Not only the salesperson is the job. There's people that manufactures the product. There are many people that runs the risk. There are people that are doing the IT. There's legal. So I also encourage you, just don't think about, when you think about a job, just to think, oh, the marketing person is representing the job. It is actually very broad, and often talk to different people to see what fits you. It's probably a point I think Eric made very importantly. So I will turn to my ex-colleague and good friend, Francois, who runs a private bank.
Thank you, Mervyn. It's a pleasure to be here. Listen, to be a bit anecdotal, I'm going to tell you what happened to me. I think it might be useful as well. I was a student for too long, according to my dad. I spent my first 7 years as an IB banker. Then I disappeared from banking for 10 years. I ran a global franchise, consumer goods, which took me to Singapore for many years. And eventually I went back to banking in wealth management. So I spent too much time studying. Actually, I never wanted to be a banker. As a Swiss, it's totally boring, isn't it? First tip, do not think that you know what you like. Just try. The second thing is, how do you get into these things? So if you don't know too much and you don't have too many connections, you might be starting with doing the groundwork that David was referring to, but how do you access? I did send my CV to all Swiss banks. The HR department doesn't work. On average, you get into bin 22, you see what I mean? Too many. So you need to be a bit more creative, and you think you have no network. Wrong. My lovely wife was a dental hygienist, and she had a patient whose brother was the head of M&A at Credit Suisse First Boston in London. Guess what? I wrote a letter. He invited me. I had no money, so I took a train and a boat, and I visited. 2 tips. The first one, I bought my first suit, brown collar. Wrong. Check the dress code. And white socks, please avoid. Second, actually, the man was offering me a job, but he was inviting me to wait because this was a bit of an economic crisis, and I was more impatient than that, so I came back and looked for another opportunity in Switzerland. I ran into a friend at the station coming back from London, a long friend from high school. And I told him my story. He says, do not write to HR. Write to the line management. I said, line management? What is that? Yeah, go to the guys who can take a decision. So the next day, I called this other Swiss bank, whose name I always forget. Swiss board, Mr. Monet, can I please talk to the head of corporate finance? Third tip, be bold. You never know. At that time in the 80s, I could talk actually to the head of corporate finance. Believe it or not, the next day, after 15 minutes on the phone, he invited me to Zurich. We had lunch, and he hired me. And I said, can I go to M&A instead? And there I was for quite some time. So I left. The reason why corporate finance is because I wanted to fertilize a field where you learn a lot, you get exposed to many things, as opposed to asset management, which I discovered when I started to manage my little portfolio. But 10 years out of banking, I scratched my head, 45 years old, in Singapore. What do I do? Who do I know? What do I like? Important questions. What do you like? Who do you know? Swiss, Singapore, wealth management. Equation is kind of a winning formula. But I was not so much looking for learning. You always try to look for learning. I was also looking for another strategic dimension because the business I was running was a sunset business. Think about growth. You need to go in a place where there are perspectives. We live or die on growth. So, wealth management, who do I know? My reputation at UBS was still around, and actually I could put a foot in the door and start again. I started in a very humble position. I was a CEO of a company with 2,000 employees. I was actually given a desk and go for it. This is the way sometimes you need to show next step adaptability, confidence. And eventually, 15 years later, you actually do what is right and try to make a difference every day. The tip that I have for you, in addition to everything which was said, when actually you meet anyone, you need to show passion. You need to show fire. In addition to all the other things said, we are choosing people we want to work with. We want to choose people who are hungry, who actually don't need to be pushed into things. So don't do what you can. Do what you should do. Go the extra mile and keep very high standards.
Thank you. So, good stories, private bankers, okay? Remember that. I think time is, so I'll switch a little bit to another question to Freddie. When you graduate from business, you obviously will go interview for the accounting firms for sure, but I think accounting firms seems to be doing a lot more than just audit nowadays. You do consulting, you do advisory. Can you tell us a little bit about, what consulting firms like Deloitte are doing now in addition to that, and what are the potential opportunities for people?
Yes, thanks, Melvin. Well, this is a very good question because, Big Four, to many of us, we know that, they are doing traditional professional services like auditing, taxation, and a little bit of transaction advisory. But over the last 2 decades, we developed our management consulting and risk advisory business very, very rapidly. So at the end of the day, I believe there's some reasons behind that. So first of all, management consulting actually is one kind of professional services, and we all got the same DNA. And many of the major consulting firms in the market, actually they were incubated by the Big Four. So you imagine like names like Accenture, Barrington, they were spin off by Arthur Andersen and KPMG. And then the consulting practice of EY and PwC, they were sold to a technology company or other management consulting firms. So actually, we got the DMA to do that, but because we believe that we have to be really good in our traditional services. So when the market wants us to just focus on auditing, then to maintain our independent standards. So it's fine for us to stay away from the market for a while. But during the period when we were not that active in doing management consulting, we find that a lot of clients still came to us. And they have a lot of trust in our capability to have them resolve a lot of that kind of problems, like building IT systems, doing talent development, enhance their financial management, that kind of support. So we believe that because of our client base, because of our ability to build that practice, so we came back. So after we came back, we can see a big change in the market. So now we are major players in management consulting, and our size of business actually, to a great extent, exceed the slightly longer established management consulting firms. So, and also, well, in the market, actually, we can see some initiatives driven by government or regulators. So, for example, like in financial services, the regulators ask banks to do Basel II, Basel III, and ask insurance company to do Solvency II, and then so recently the new accounting standard like IFRS 9, IFRS 17, and also the U.S. legislated Sarbanes-Oxley Act, so which require a lot of internal control assessment reporting by big listed companies and also big financial institutions. So in all that kind of service needs, people only turn to Big Four. So we have very strong edge to compete against the pure management consulting players, and that's why we are growing very rapidly. And the most recent development is innovative technology. So in that space, actually, we are doing extremely well, and then we have already gone through the phase of doing a lot of proof of concept with the regulators and also a lot of the big financial institutions. And now we are working very closely with them in commercializing the use cases. So I believe that our consulting practice will continue to grow, and up to now, globally, that represents 1/3 of our global revenue. And it's the same size, more or less the same size of our audit practice. And we believe that the weighting of our management consulting revenue will continue to grow at a faster pace than our traditional business.
Thank you. So, clients cross-sell, that's another point. I think that's a good segue. You mentioned technology. So I have a question for Eric. I think obviously a lot of discussion about technology being disruptive to the financial industry. You saw the, IA has issued new license. We have one of the players today here, Bowtie, and look forward to hearing from them. How has technology transformed the insurance industry, and what kind of opportunities you think is there for the young generations?
Thank you, Mervyn. So I will divide into two areas. The first area is in terms of insurance. In terms of this kind of rapid technological advancement, what do we need to offer in insurance? So right now, I think we all have heard about the cyber risk, the so-called data leakage, etc. So we have this cyber risk protection for corporations who are holding a lot of customer data or doing a lot of so-called data transfer. So cyber security is something very important nowadays. And on the other hand, is how it transforms or disrupt the industry. So I'll leave some parts, juicy part to Fred to talk about in the next section. But in general, I would say it's extremely important these days for insurers because we are trying to transform our way of interaction with customers, make it a lot easier, a lot friendlier. And one particular point is about the technical side, how we change our insurance offerings. In terms of pricing, if you have a good data, if the analytic work is done well, actually we can do a lot better in the pricing and also in terms of proposition for our customers. And also we can better manage fraud. Because in insurance, fraud management is a very important aspect. If we can manage it well, actually it's beneficial for all the insuring public. That's something insurance companies are going through. And also, I think you have heard about something like ecosystem, right? So insurance is also trying to build an ecosystem so that everyone, I mean, the customer can enjoy, no matter it's an individual or a business concern, they can enjoy how to use this ecosystem to get whatever information they want in the area of risk management. Just like Tim said, risk management is something very, very important these days. So insurance is actually in the center of risk management. So we are now trying to build up an ecosystem so people can easily access the information useful for managing the risk. That's how technology is changing us.
Thank you. Yeah, I think using data, understanding what your end customer wants, and also the risk management. I think it's about growing the pie. I think people always talk about technology, cannibalizing the industry. I think when we think about it, it's growing the pie. More people uses it. I think more opportunities. So, thanks for that. Maybe I'll turn to David again. Since the financial crisis, I think, the bankers always gets a lot of headline and, we think about, the good days are gone and there's a lot of scrutinies and also the opportunities. But for you, what's so exciting still about the industry and how do you see, the growth or the future of that industry?
Sure, thank you. I think one thing that keeps many of us very excited about the job, again, I've been doing it for 20 years, but one thing that keeps us very excited about a job is the job satisfaction. I mentioned earlier about knowing what your client wants. I still remember my first IPO that I worked on. It was quite a long time ago, but I worked, 18 hours a day on every Sunday for that IPO, worked on it for 10 months. It was tough, but at the end of that 10 months, when that IPO was hitting the market, I saw people carrying that prospectus walking around in Central. I saw newspapers talking about that company. I saw it started trading on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. It wasn't here, it was the old trading hall. Actually, it's here, but different setup. You get a lot of job satisfaction. And at that moment, when I saw it started trading, I felt that all the hard work that I put in the past 10 months was worth it. Again, it is that job satisfaction that I think keep us very excited about our job. And we still get that today. We could be doing a convertible bond, we could be just doing a bond, it could be an M&A. When we see that happening and we see how we add value to our clients, we give them what they want in a way that add value to them, it makes us all the hard work that we put in worth it. And I think that is really the key.
Thank you. I'm going to merge some of the questions because, in interest of time. A question for Francois. We've got a really good question I want to ask. He said, what do you have any advice for female who wants to join the financial industries? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think it's an important question.
Okay, let me quickly put that disclaimer. I think I'm going to talk about female and male at the same time. Wealth management is actually predominantly driven from a relationship management perspective by ladies. And I think it has to do with the ability to listen, the determination to servicing, and of course, an element around communication, which is obviously a forte. So I think we have about 70% of relationship managers, female relationship managers. So it's really a place to be. And let me give you a sense of opportunity as well. This Asia-Pacific region is kind of cruising to 20 trillions, which is the net private wealth pool. This is growing 8% a year. It's going to cruise to 25 trillion very quickly. We have one obstacle for growth. The most important obstacle for growth is the constraints in terms of talents. If you compare Asia Pacific to the US, about the same size, even though now Asia is slightly bigger and grows twice faster, there are 200,000 relationship managers. Just Morgan Stanley has 20,000 advisors in the US, JP Morgan 15,000. In Hong Kong, you do not have 3,000 relationship managers. Across this region, you do not have 10, 15,000. There's a huge shortage. You take the top 10 players in this industry, we collectively do not manage more than 10% of these 20 trillions. You go into China onshore, which is a bit like oil below sea level, but 3,000 feet. We haven't even started to penetrate this market. So the world is just an opportunity. Now, it's not just about relationship management, because it's a bit complex. You need a network. You need not only hard skill, but also soft skills and a network. But it's also for product people. That's a beautiful point of entry for junior investment consultant. It's a beautiful point of entry. It's also for back office functions, because if you don't do back office at the beginning, you are not going to do it later. And I'm going to tell you, you are going to miss something in the depth and breadth of your understanding of your serviceability. So, totally exciting. And it's a world where we see very, very, very successful female managers going up to the curve of CEOs. And we know who is CEO in the banks around. And frankly, I'm talking for everyone here.
Yeah, I think to add, if you look around today, I think we have more females than male. And I think two observations I had, working at Hong Kong. One, I think actually Hong Kong is actually a fantastic place for equal opportunities. In fact, oftentimes I feel I need to root for the guys because I keep interviewing people, and then we come back and say, hey, why is like all these girl candidates? So I mean, guys, please work hard, because I think the girls are definitely what we found is a lot of grit, a lot of intelligence, and I think that's a place in Hong Kong. I think especially, I think we're very thankful that it's a very equal opportunity. Maybe I'll turn to another question, which I think is very interesting, which is maybe for Freddie. A question is about, people talked about how Hong Kong's position and how does that compare to people like your offices in Shanghai and Beijing, and how would Hong Kong's position uniqueness sustain, and how do you look first for that, and talk about that?
Yes, I guess Hong Kong young professionals can still have very good prospect and future for a very unique role in our profession. So as Tim mentioned in his keynote speech, so a lot of us, we have that kind of international exposure. We have aspiration to become international. So, and the environment here actually enables us to do that. So for example, in the context of myself, so I did mainly doing banking audit in Hong Kong, and then during my first 10 years or so at KPMG, and then I would say I'm actually blue blood banking auditor in the profession. So, but during the last 2 years of which I spent a lot of time in Beijing, and I actually lived in Beijing for 6 years. And then that allowed me to work with a lot of big financial institutions like banks and financial and insurance companies and in Beijing during my time at E&Y. So during that time, our clients have a lot of trust on accountants and advisors from Hong Kong. So we have been working together since the very first instance I worked with them in Beijing. And now we still work together, but in a very different geography. So now, over the last few years, what I'm mainly working with them in my responsibility is to help organize our global client services for those Chinese financial institutions. And the kind of work we help them with their overseas expansion. We help them with resolving regulatory compliance issues in other financial centers. And also because they are very interested to know what kind of fintech development in overseas markets. So I have to ship in a lot of our fintech consultants to China to exchange ideas with them and also share with them what kind of solutions banks or insurance companies are using in their own market. So I think, well, Hong Kong professionals definitely, they have a very clear edge in that regard. And how to enable global connectivity for our big clients in China is really something we can do slightly better, I would say.
Thank you. Maybe I'll ask the same question. I think this is a question to maybe Eric as well. Like, how does Hong Kong versus, the role of that?
You mean compared to the region? Yeah. Actually, Hong Kong is a very advantageous position in terms of talents that we are having and all those talents in the pipeline. When you compare to other, I would say other insurance communities around the region, Hong Kong is very mature. Hong Kong is very mature. The penetration is very high. In terms of risk management technique or the technology that we are using, I think we are also in a very high rank. It's very simple. When you look at the competition here in Hong Kong, we have more than 110 general insurers. And for life insurers, we have also a few tens. You can see this immense competition actually is helpful to drive our skills, our people up for competitiveness. So, and also given all the great initiatives driven by China and Hong Kong government, for example, how Hong Kong play a center of risk management role in our Greater Bay Area or in the whole region, how we want to flourish our maritime business, how we even we are even talking about what is called insurance-linked securities. So Hong Kong is actually in a very good position. Of course, compared to another country like Singapore, they are a bit close to us. But I do have confidence that we can, with the new force joining the community, we can further outgrow other peers.
I'll ask the same question, Francois. How do you look at the Hong Kong as a role for private bank and, onshore, offshore, any comments for people that's around?
So first, wealth in Asia Pacific is 70% North Asia, 30% South Asia. It says it all. This is where things happen. Second, the reputation of Hong Kong in terms of competency centers, talent, and a bridge into China is really a magnet. And we are growing faster in North Asia than we do in Singapore. Third, there is definitely an awareness around the development of talents, HKMA as well, PWMA, where we are increasing the numbers of summer internships and the commitment to the development of the place. And from a technology point of view, we see that the context of the Greater Bay Area, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, as well as the efforts on fintech, as well as the policy on family offices, will actually position Hong Kong as probably a place where we're growing wealth management faster than in the rest of the region. Onshore is a bit more complex because obviously the regulatory environment in China is complex, and the market development is not where it needs to be, but it was obviously not the first thing that the Chinese government wanted to develop 15 years ago. It has become now very much in demand. We can see that access to full ownership for international banks is open up. Second, what was called the shadow banking with the issues of guaranteed returns is going to be actually taken out of the market. We don't guarantee return, who can? And therefore, there's a place for real investment. And third, there's a normalization of expected return in China from a private banking perspective. 6-7 years ago, 15% was not good enough. Today, 6-7% is getting pretty normalized and good enough. So it is time for a company like Credit Suisse now to commit to onshoring our capability, and we have a big plan for that for the year to come.
David, maybe briefly, Hong Kong versus onshore, offshore market. How does Hong Kong on the banking side.
Yeah, no.
So, Ro.
Yeah, no, I think given the great legal system we have, the free economy, the language, the talents, the reputation and all that, I think Hong Kong is firmly the international financial hub. I don't think there's any other city. Maybe Singapore is close to Hong Kong, but by quite a wide margin. I'm saying this because I'm in Hong Kong. So I think we are in a very unique position and very good position despite some of the challenges that we are seeing. And another point is the diversity that I see. In my office, I work with people locally from mainland China, from India, from Singapore, from the US, from the UK, from Australia. It's a mix of many different things, and that diversity helps us to look at things from different perspectives and make us sort of better rounded or all-rounded in terms of how we look at issues, how we deal with problems, and how we approach things. And I think that is unique. That is something, again, that I don't see in a lot of or any of the other major cities around the region, and it really gives us an edge.
Thank you. I think we run out of time, but I think this is really important. I think it definitely is a place where there's a lot of rule structure system. You see like the Zurich U.S. investment banking. I mean, this is really the place to be. But I think back to this point that we talked about, we're in the service industry, and so the key is really to understand what our clients want, and the clients in Hong Kong, obviously there's some clients, but it's a location where a lot of people come through. Understanding that client, and I think Francois mentioned it really well. There's obviously an inertia to understand what the client wants, but sometimes you have to dive into it to understand what they want. It's sometimes uncomfortable in the beginning, but learning that opens up a lot of the doors. So I do think that's really a good advice from everyone. So thank you. Again, we run out of time. We could go on for hours, but thanks a lot, and I hope this is useful for everyone.
Thank you for all the panelists. So could you please stay on stage for the photos? Could you please stay on stage for the photos, please?
Oh, and also, I think there were some good questions. So I think we do have in the plug. I think Invest Hong Kong has a conference on fintech, November 4th and 8th. So we'll be giving out free tickets, three of them, to the best questions. So we'll contact you later. There are some very good questions here. So.
Thank you very much to all the panelists, Mr. Chow, Mr. Lau, Dr. Monet, Mr. Hui, and also Mr. Choi. So may I now pass the mic to Matthew Ma, our MC for next session.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Ruben Ma. I am a Year 2 student studying the Business and Management program at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology from Indonesia. The following panel session is a fascinating one, as we are going to explore career opportunities of technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship in finance. And before I introduce today's distinguished guest, I would like to remind the students here to prepare the questions you would like to ask our guest. We are honored to have experienced professionals to share their views on prospects of working in the financial services, in particular on how it is like to be a founder, the calibers needed to develop a career in the finance-related innovation and technology sector, as well as the up-and-coming trends. May I now introduce the speakers. First, we have Mr. Lucas Petricas, Head of Innovation Lab of Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing Limited. The HKEX Innovation Lab explores and accelerates creative new applications of technology. And Lucas and his team runs a portfolio of projects that apply targeted AI, smart automation, and knowledge-based solutions to augment HKEX operations in areas such as trade settlement, company regulation, and low latency market data. Mr. Petricus, welcome to the stage. Next, we have Mr. Jean Liu, co-founder and CEO of LegalX. LegalX provides all-in-one solution for any professional services firms, private or listed companies, by enabling workflow automation, document management, search visualization, cloud computing, and AI capabilities. Prior to founding LegalX, Mr. Liu was a legal counsel of the Securities and Futures Commission. Mr. Liu, welcome to the stage. And we have Mr. Alan Lui, Chief Marketing Officer of Fusion Bank Limited. Fusion Bank is one of the banks granted the virtual bank license by the Hong Kong Monetary Authority in 2019. It is a joint venture between Tencent, ICBC, HKEX, Hillhouse Capital, and Perfect Ridge Limited. Mr. Lui is currently appointed by the government as a board member of the Consumer Council and Competition Commission, as well as a member of the Hong Kong Housing Authority, Trade and Industry Advisory Board, and the Standing Committee on Discipline Services, Salaries, and Conditions of Service. Mr. Lui, welcome to the stage. And now we have Mr. Fred Ngan, co-founder and co-CEO of Bowtie Life Insurance Company Limited. InsurTech, or virtual insurance, is one of the hottest topics nowadays. Bowtie, the first virtual insurer in Hong Kong, aims to meet the same high standards that customers and insurance authorities expect of traditional insurers. Mr. Ngan is an entrepreneur who previously co-founded 2 successful InsurTech startups and has spent 10 years servicing local and multinational insurance and asset managers across over 10 countries with global advisory firms EY and Oliver Wyman. Mr. Ngan, welcome to the stage. And last but not least, for sure we are delighted to have our panel chair for this session, Mr. Christopher Hui, Executive Director of Financial Services Development Council. Mr. Hui? Mr. Hui possesses extensive experience in the financial services industry across both private and public sectors, including the development of strategy and ecosystem in the Greater Bay Area for the New World Development Company Limited. So, Mr. Christopher Hui?
Thank you all, James, Tim, and Lawrence, everyone. As you can see from the way we dress, this panel is different, a little bit different from what you saw just now. We try to be more techy, a little bit younger, because today we have a lot of founding CEOs and also innovators on this panel. And to start with, I would like to ask a question to Lucas, because I think he's a bit different in the sense that he tried to foster innovation in-house within HKEX as a corporate, which is different from other panelists where they set up their own companies to foster innovation. So, Lucas, I know that you start off not as a techie guy, right? So you did start your finance career and then eventually move on to join HKEX and now heading the innovation lab. Can you share with us what does your lab do, and also exactly any advice to our students here in terms of how you do the crossover from finance to technology?
Thanks, Chris, and great to be sitting next to you again. We sat on the same floor when I first started my career in HKEX, just down a few desks away from each other. So it's really good to be back. The first thing graduates really ask us when they come and meet HKEX at a career fair is they sort of say, well, we didn't realize you guys were actually a company. Most people just think of the stock exchange as being a marketplace. Not many people really sort of stop to think that maybe there are people that do something to make that marketplace happen. But in effect, HKEX as a company is quite a large one. We're about 2,000 people. I'm pleased to say we're 51% female. And at the moment, the main business of the stock exchange is really sort of 2 components. One of them is a technology business, is that we effectively run a very fancy algorithm that matches buyers and sellers in a very, very low latency, or what you call high-speed environment. In a blink of an eye, you can execute 200 trades on the stock exchange. So we really measure things in milliseconds rather than minutes or days. The exchange itself, you may be wondering, big, empty, sort of expensive-looking space. Where's all the cool stuff? The cool stuff is in the far eastern side of Hong Kong in Chung Kwan O. That's where the real exchange is, in a data center over there. That technology business has been around for many years. It's evolved, but fundamentally does the same thing it did 35 or 40 years ago when the market's electronified. It matches buyers and sellers. The second big business that the exchange does, which is probably less obvious, is effectively an insurance business. It's a counterparty insurance business we call the clearinghouse, which is after that millisecond, after your trade matches, you got to make sure that you get the cash, that someone is taking shares off you, you deliver the shares. It's really providing that security. And for all sorts of reasons, that security doesn't happen straight away. It's necessary to have that process of clearing, right? So around these two businesses over time, exchanges have generally sort of gone from being mutual broker-owned companies. I think David was saying you did your first IPO here, probably rang the gong on this stage. It looked a bit different. Back in those days, the exchange was owned exclusively by its brokers. Over time, Hong Kong, like many other financial centers, has demutualized. The exchange listed, it's listed today, it's a $300 billion market cap company. It's listed on itself, which is really cool. You can do that as a stock exchange. And the reason we have an innovation lab these days is really to help modernize all of the above that I just described. So what we're doing here is trying to bring automation, all three core types of machine learning into our business in terms of regulation, helping us sort of vet documents, for example, in terms of efficiency, helping us process stuff, and so forth, really to make our operation better and let that translate into the markets being more accessible, more open, more efficient for the community. Every single person on the panel that spoke before, their companies are in one way or another associated with the exchange, either as members or as clearing participants or as users, as institutional buy-side users of the products here. Probably the shoes you're wearing were made by a Hong Kong listed company, even if they have a foreign brand on them. If you go for lunch after today with your friends to a cafe, it's probably going to be operated by a Hong Kong listed company in a building that is leased from another Hong Kong listed company with food that is served to you by another Hong Kong listed company. So when we look at the future, what we want to do with technology is not just what we're doing today, which is to make stuff more efficient. We want to bridge that gap that exists between the capital markets and the physical world, because this stage right here, and its many previous iterations, is the only sort of piece of real estate in Hong Kong that has really played host to every single success story that has come out of China and gone on to be a public company. The only thing they have in common is they've been on this stage to ring the gong and really fulfill their dream of becoming a public company. That is a tremendously exciting thing. There are so many exciting companies listed here, but it's just that if you walk around the city, you may not even know that you're interacting with their products, their services. I think for us, the thrust of an innovation lab is to help bridge that remaining barrier between capital markets as a sort of this nebulous, concept closed door office that you never really go into, you never know. And actually, the reality is that the capital markets are all around you every day. Chris, the second part of your question was about my own career. You were completely right. I'm not a technologist. So for me, it's been an interesting learning process. And I think this is a pivot that probably many of you will make in your careers as every industry becomes more technology driven. It's okay. I mean, whatever you're studying now, especially if you're in a technical vocation, probably in 3 or 4 years, is going to be somewhat outdated, and you have to refresh your knowledge. Of course, if you study classical literature, that's never going to be outdated. But many other things. So when I found myself being asked to sort of transition from being a strategist and a finance guy to running an innovation lab, I was a bit scared. Because I said, well, I don't really understand machine learning and all this cool stuff. And they said, it's okay. They said, maybe you can pivot and maybe you can learn. And the way I've done that is, one, surround myself with people who can teach me things I didn't know about. And two is, and I think this point was made on a previous panel very well, is network. A lot of your career path is going to be not so much about what's on your CV or the good things you've done. It's going to be who you know. And I can understand that for many people, that can be a difficult and daunting experience. Maybe for some of you coming here today and sort of dressing up on a Saturday morning and taking notes and feeling the pressure to ask questions, maybe it's a bit daunting. I'm an introvert as well. I didn't want to sit in the front row. It's not my style. But that's okay. Because there's a very good chance the person sitting next to you today, you make friends with them. One day they may be the person that offers you a job, right? And that's really a huge, huge part of my transition into technology has been just to go out, meet people who talk about things I don't understand, and eventually become friends.
Thank you, Lucas. Secondly, I will have a question for Jean, because I understand that you are a lawyer by training, and eventually you move on to found your own company, LegalX. So may I know what does LegalX do? And also at the same time, why you are so bold as to move from the corporate world or being a lawyer in a comfortable office to become a CEO of a new startup? Can you share with us your path that you have taken?
Sure, thanks, Chris. First of all, it's great to be here. It's a very vibrant room, and especially at the back, I think it's basically what will shape the future of Hong Kong. And there are a few parts of Chris' question. I think first of all is, what is LegalX about? Actually, we're not just only about law. We are a SaaS, enterprise software, that empowers teams to collaborate real time and reproduce workflows automatically, while they can file automatically without spending too much mundane effort to do the filings. And we also help them search through private and public data. So strictly speaking, we're not just aiming for the legal verticals, but given my professional background, it naturally occurs to me that our first group of customers happen to be a law firm. And as to the second part of the question, what is it to, what do I have to give humble advice to the future graduates? I think, and what motivated us to start this company? I think over the course of my legal career, it has been very interesting, and at the same time, it offered me with a lot of opportunities to really examine different processes. And how I looked at this, what I did was usually quantify in a matter of scale of 1 to 10. Let's say from 1 to 6, it's the repetitive part. It's a more mundane part that kind of become recursive over time, for example, in M&A deals or some kind of listed company compliance processes. And this kind of repetitiveness occurs in not just the legal vertical, it actually occurs in corporate finance and auditing and company secretarial stuff. So when I first started, we actually, it was quite a coincidence. I think my co-founder, Eugene, who is not here today, is actually a graduate from Yale, and he studied cognitive science and a fervent coder. So we met at a random wedding of a common friend, and then I challenged him. I was like, okay, so there are these deals, and would you be able to make something out of it? And he boldly told me that, yeah, why not? Let's do it. So every day after work, obviously his keenness to really prototype and code will be much more daunting compared to I am, because I just drew things out. And explained the use cases for him. And I forced him to go to a little place that my dad offered me. And then we stayed there every night, really go through different drawings and prototypes. And after a certain period of time, the prototype really worked. It's the kind of aha moment where you realize that technology actually can do something pretty smart. I'm not saying, in an intelligence scale of, let's say, 7 to 10, those will be quite difficult to accomplish. I mean, if you look at Google, their artificial intelligence, given so much data that they have, only managed to, let's say, book a restaurant. And it would be quite lunatic to say that, the computer can actually become like a lawyer. So we are not about that. We are actually much more grounded than that. And if you ask me like some sort of advice to graduates, what they can do, I think the first step is to garner experience. And this kind of experience is not just work experience. It's actually going to a platform of opportunities to look at the problems that are surrounding you. And those problems are practical. They don't have to be disruptive. Actually, they don't have to be groundbreaking. The cracks are everywhere on the floor. Actually, if you look at it, there are many low hanging fruits everywhere that technology can achieve. So what we do at LegalX, actually, we also have a Chinese brand called Yunban. Our target customers first started off in Hong Kong, and we actually angle towards China in the future, and we have already set up an office in Shenzhen. So what we want to do is to integrate everything. If you imagine it's some sort of like a Slack, Asana, and Dropbox integrated in one platform, where every day when you collaborate, the computer will record the stuff and reproduce all those processes for your future cases. So I think to conclude, what kind of advice I can give to graduates, I think it's about experience, and don't always focus on making money. I mean, experience is more valuable than making money because it's all relative, right? If you have experience and you can crack some sort of problem or really make some value-adding advice to people or make some products that can help people, I think that's much more important, and that matters more to founding a company.
Thank you, Gene. I think one key takeaway from what I just heard is know the right people. And I'm sure if your company go listed, you choose Hong Kong, HKEX, and you have David as your advisor, right? So moving on, I think I would like to take you from the physical world to the virtual world, because today we have two virtual professionals, may I say that, one from the insurance sector and another from the banking sector. And my understanding for virtual banking or insurance is it's a very new phenomenon. And I'm sure that many students here are very interested in how to get in and whether they will be on par with other people who may have loads of experience in the conventional sector, but they may start like similar to our graduates who are starting afresh. But I'm just thinking whether there's any experience you may share with us in terms of how you embark your path in the virtual banking, Ellen, and also understand that you are a 10A achiever. So how you excel from academia, marketing, and land up in where you are now.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. So me, myself, after graduate from college, in fact, I was studying science. And then after that, I joined Cathay as the management trainee. And then for the last 3 years, I was in Asia Miles. So it's pretty strange. Like now I landed sort of in the finance industry. So, but I think what really in common is when we talk about like virtual banking, all those things, all the disruption. Of course, I can't disclose too much what we are working right now because we haven't formally launched. But basically, I think we have seen in the world all those virtual banks or the digital banks, what we are seeing the phenomenon is basically they're disrupting not really fundamentally the products, it's the experience. So also that's what I'm sort of like bringing onto the table. So as a marketing guy, or like you can say it's an interaction between the customer and the product and the companies, is what we are disrupting is the experience. So you can see a lot of like virtual banks or digital banks in the like UK or like China or like Kakao Bank in Korea. They're not really doing things like fundamentally very different from a bank, but the experience that they provide is fundamentally different. So we're talking about, okay, not talking about like nowadays, you as a customer, you're going to the bank. It's more the bank will be showing up at the right time, at the right place, and giving you the right product. So that's the sort of experience that we are selling. And I think it goes back to Lawrence Pons, like this morning, say, okay, understanding needs. So when we talk about understanding the needs, it's more than, after understanding the needs, how you create the product. What's the framework? How you can create a product that suits the needs best so that the customers buy in. I think that's what we are chasing after. And that's also why I'm sort of like coming to the table, because I'm the least qualified to talk in this hall because I basically have no financial background per se. But of course, Asian Miles, you can argue with that's also a little bit like a financial institution or whatever, but that's the best business I ever had because that's unregulated. But anyway, so that will be my advice also probably to the students is like, okay, of course, first you need to be at least got a good score at a college. You need to know like some hardcore facts, hardcore knowledge about the industry, of course. Then the second is really then understand a little bit more like understanding the customer and the things. But then nowadays there are a lot of like frameworks where we talk about like how from understanding the customer to creating a product. So something like design thinking or all those things is like the framework that we need to understand. And interesting enough is like not a lot of colleges are sort of like teaching that. So that's great because everybody's on a level playing field, so nobody's understanding that. So try to understand that, how to create an experience. We call those people experience designer. And then third thing I would say is like, as the innovators or innovating companies, like you keep learning. That's the importance. And I think right now in our companies, we talk about we learn new things in hours, not talking about days. So basically from the morning, probably you talk about one thing, and then probably by the close of business, you talk about the fifth versions already. So I think that's the speed that we talk about. So only by evolving, you can sort of like compete with the market. So that's my advice to the students, I would say.
Thank you. Apart from the virtual banks, we also have virtual insurers here. So Fred has just founded a first virtual insurer in Hong Kong. And I understand that previously you're also from a consulting background, and also you may have a lot of experience in terms of your potentially bitter experience of how you go through all the hurdles. And mind you that we don't have the insurance regulator here, so you can say whatever you want. So may I hear from you in terms of any advice you can give the students here about the path you have gone through and any particular lesson you can draw for us?
Well, thanks for having me. I guess let's talk about the pain points. For insurance, I think the pain point is the world has changed. If you look around, everyone is using the mobile. If you can actually do online banking, online lending, e-wallet payment, everything has changed. But insurance is always like the last man that hasn't really changed for years. Some people might think banking is behind, but insurance is almost like 5 years or 10 years behind banking. For me, if you really think about it, right, look at some stats. Only 1% or less than 1% of the insurance for the life and health are sold through direct channels. That means 99% are still sold through the agency or brokers. But interestingly, if you ask the people here, right, if you do any survey, especially people who are in these generations, almost like 60% or 70% think they would consider buying online. I believe there's actually exists a certain segment. The well-educated ones, the tech-savvy ones, actually prefer to do it online, prefer to do their own research. That gap between the 1% and the 70% represent a huge opportunity if you get it right, but also represent a lot of challenge to disrupt this market because of the consumer educations, because of getting the license, provided fully seamless experience. So for us, our role is to really trying to innovate, trying to provide that direct channel so that people can understand. And I think another big opportunity for us is, I think several people mentioned this, is the ecosystem integrations. To me, everything will be connected. You wouldn't download an ad just for insurance, just for auto, just for health. I think it should be just one app that integrates everything. Wealth management should be holistic. So I think it should be just one click away from you to manage all the insurance contracts for all the investment, saving, everything. We are in a very lucky generation right now because we're not limited by technologies. So let's focus on the pain points and focus on the application. There's actually a lot of things we can do if we're able to figure that out.
So thank you, Fred. I think this key message we've been hearing today is focusing on what the other side needs. I'm sure that many people here need is a job, right? That's why we have our CV clinic arranged outside, and thanks also to Bowtie and HKEX, who, among others, offer professional advice in terms of how you can better write resumes to impress the employers. So now is the Q&A time, and we have many questions, and I'm sure many of the students here are actually quite inspired by your startup story. That's why we have a student here asking, for young generations who have startup ideas, how do you transfer just ideas into real businesses? I think you can write a book on that, right? So, but can I, any idea? Anyone want to, maybe Fred or anyone? How to transfer ideas or translate ideas into real business? Anyone?
I think at the end of the day, of course, you need to start up with some sort of resources or money or whatever. I think I would say you need a compelling story. In a sense, the story is not about just selling the dreams. It's more like, okay, why consumer wants that product? Yeah, so if it's an idea, okay, great, there are always ideas. But you need to understand finally, okay, why the people will buy into that, and then why the people are willing to pay for that. So that's the sort of the story. It's just like the pitching, right? Then you pitch, and then you get the resources. Of course, then you write a lot of like proposals, whatever. But you need to have a story, even like just what we call it, elevator pitch, right? Just like 5 minutes. You basically talk to anybody. People will, okay, great, buy in. Although I don't have money, but if I had money, I would have like invested in that. I think that would be the key of like the fundamentals of everything. Start off by something that like good story. Of course, not just like marketing, not only the facade, but it's the fundamental. What's the difference between your probably products versus the other products that's currently available in the market?
For me, I think the key is collating information. The first step is you really need to understand what's happening in the real world. After reading so much books per your degree, the first best step, I think, would be very helpful. As I recently heard about from the latest MBAs, they don't really teach you to start up as a student or fresh out of university, because the information becomes more competitive and you need to find a niche. And this niche has to be from somewhere more closer to what's happening in the practical world. And I think for my token of experiences, from working at different law firms, you kind of observe, and you need to observe with a very humble heart. And because sometimes things just happen the way they are and they do, and no one's gonna challenge it, and no one's saying that you should always be causing trouble at your firm, but you can always collate all this information and to imagine. So the next thing is you have to keep your imagination, and after having this imagination, you can draw it out. If you're not an UX UI, you can always have a pen and some paper, draw it out, and imagine how things can be solved. So you have to be a fervent problem solver. And of course, the next thing is working really hard every night. And don't just kid yourself. If you keep telling yourself, okay, one day I'm gonna start this, you'll never start it. So you need to find talents and friends and really gather the skills that you need to make that drawing or imagination become a reality. So I think that's the first thing, really become more scientific and systematic, know what's happening around the world and in different workplaces, and then go for it.
So because time is running out, we have the last question, which I'm not very confident is from a student, because obviously it's very well written. And what is said is that given the legacy of many traditional banks, how can they transform from a traditional bank into a more data-driven organization? So it seems to be someone who has been working with banks before. But anyway, anyone who can shed some light on this question and enlighten our students here on that? How to transform banks with legacy, like a traditional bank, into a data-driven organization, like many of you are running. Lucas, you want to say? Yeah.
I can try. I used to work in a bank as well, and in many ways, the stock exchange is quite similar structurally to a bank. I would say it's a cultural thing, right? I mean, the last question was about making an idea reality. If you have a really great idea, you don't have to go and start a new thing to get it done. I mean, mad respect to the guys who do that, right? But sometimes you can go to a company that already has all the resources and the brand and whatever and pitch that same idea and make it a reality. There your challenge becomes a bit different. It becomes a cultural one. You might have the best pitch and the best idea ever and all the resources lined up and the right technology, and someone just says, well, I don't like it because I don't believe in it and I refuse to back my opinion with any real data. And as an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, that can be extremely frustrating. My experience is trying to reform an organization from within is that most people are actually quite open to change, but it just takes longer, because their threshold for demonstrating value is probably higher than it is, let's say, than it might be for a venture capitalist or someone who's backing an early stage startup. You go to a company and you say to the CTO who sort of designed the systems with his own hands 30 years ago, you say, I think your system sucks, I think you need to embrace new technology. They're gonna kick you out of the room straight away. So I think, my takeaway from all of that, especially from a student's perspective, is whether you go through the path of doing a thing on your own where you really need a lot of hustle and determination and methodological approach, If you go down another route where you go to a big company, as many of you will, and try to do things from within, which is the reason they hire you in the first place, is have that self-awareness of when something is a good idea and when you need to tone that down and adjust it for your audience. And if you have that self-awareness and you know who your audience is and you know your context, you know what you can and can't do and you know your timing, you can be tremendously successful as well.
Thank you. I must say I learned a lot from this panel. And if I may, I would like to summarize that if we want to succeed in the fintech world, we have to be observant of the pain points, so to speak, in the physical world. And finally, to be humble, yet at the same time be bold. So thanks for everybody here, and thanks for listening. Thank you.
So much appreciation to the panelists, Mr. Petikras, Mr. Lui, Mr. Ngan, and Mr. Hui, for your fruitful sharing today. And for the photographer, can you take a brief picture? Okay, let's give one last round of applause to our distinguished guests for today. So thank you all for your attention for these past few minutes. May I now pass the mic back to Steve.
Thank you, Matthew. Hi, everyone. I'm back again. A big thank you to all the panelists and their sharing. Now it comes to the long-awaited part of today's program. We are very honored to have Mr. James Lau, the Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury of the Government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, to join us today to deliver the closing remarks. Please.
I'd like to have a show of hands just to know how many students are here. I mean, current students, current university students. Oh, it's a very good turnout. Thank you very much. Well, I'm glad you're all here to hear me, right? Okay. Of course, first I have to greet Lawrence and Tim. I think Tim was here from the very beginning, right? So it's amazing that the chairman of SFC is staying here for the whole morning. I'm really delighted to be here today, and I had the opportunity to really hear the panel 2 and also the last bit of panel 1. I think it is great to have this career day to really get you to be more familiar with the financial services industry and really get to meet, you have sessions afterwards, networking and so forth, and I really envy you because when I went to university, I didn't have these opportunities. Now, let me come back to today's talk. Now, Hong Kong, we are today facing a very challenging time, both due to actually foreign and also domestic factors or issues or problems. But actually, Hong Kong, we have always proven to be resilient, and we remain as as Asia's top international financial center. Of course, some are worried about capital flight, and some are worried about the Hong Kong dollar, the link exchange rate, or our banking sector, insurance sector. But these are all functioning very well, very stable, and our markets continue to be robust, and we thrive. And going forward, the future of Hong Kong's financial services industry, actually they are in your hands. Because we need the new blood, like the young talents that we see today. And actually, when we look at our panelists here, they are probably 10, 15 years older than you, right? More or less, not a lot. So don't look at me, because I am the past generation, but you are the future. So our future is in you. That's why today, I'd like to share with you just briefly on this fintech and innovation, because I think this is going to be a key transformational tool for Hong Kong as an international financial center. Now, the world is changing, and fintech, or financial technologies, is transforming, or as some say, disrupting the traditional financial services industry. The impact can be seen at 3 levels: individual, corporate, and government. In terms of individuals, transaction disintermediation is already happening, and we see the virtual here, virtual there. And many marketing or other traditional jobs, they will be replaced or displaced. This can be due to artificial intelligence or simply obsolescence of job types due to new modes of mobile or remote transaction, just for example. For corporates, many financial institutions, they adopt fintech to cope with the changes in consumer preferences, and they deal with challenges brought on by tech companies that become their competitors. Finally, governments, they similarly need to embrace fintech to improve productivity, promote financial inclusion, and drive sustainable development. The public sector also has to address regulatory issues arising from such as cryptocurrencies. The recent controversy over Libra or other stable coins illustrates the point. So governments, they need to leverage on fintech to ride with the advantage of technology. But we also need to keep an eye out for possible disruptive impact on financial stability and investor protection. Last month, I was in Sweden and Estonia to better understand the ecosystems of the vibrant fintech community there. Sweden is a leading fintech center in Scandinavia, while Estonia has seen the rapid emergence of fintech over the last decade. They are both small economies. Sweden has a population of just over 10 million. Estonia, guess what, 1.3 million. Sweden, now let me speak on Sweden first, and then I'll speak on Estonia. Sweden has long established itself as a country where technology and innovation is the norm. Sweden consistently invests more than 3% of their GDP in research and development, which is among the highest in the world. As for the number of unicorns, that is, of course, you know, a startup with a valuation of $1 billion or above, Stockholm has produced the highest number of unicorns per capita in the world other than Silicon Valley. So it's the second in the world. And if you look at fintech specifically, Sweden, they boast 400 fintech companies in payments and transfer, trading and exchange, wealth and cash management, accounting, innovation, capital, debt, and equity and insurance technology. So it's a whole range. Now, why is Sweden so successful? First, Sweden is very advanced in adopting, exploring digital technologies. This is true in the public sector, the private sector, and society in general. In the World Digital Competitive Ranking published by the International Institute for Management Development, IMD, in Switzerland, Sweden came third among 63 economies. And these rankings vary from year to year, but generally they are among the very top. A second reason is Sweden's free education system that emphasizes, and I would say, interdisciplinary study. The education system, they encourage innovation, design, and engineering, and Swedish students, they love going into tech. In fact, the most common job in Stockholm is to be a programmer. By the way, my first job after my graduating from the University of Waterloo is a systems engineer and programmer, and with IBM for 2 years. But then I departed and I joined the government, so that's where I am. The third reason is that the Swedes are globally minded. With a small domestic market, Sweden relies heavily on exports and external markets. Their fintech companies, therefore, went global very early on. So an international mindset helps the Swedish fintech companies succeed in the global economy. The fourth reason is that Sweden has a culture of giving back. Successful entrepreneurs commonly inspire and invest financially in the next generation of startups. In addition, Swedish companies are often led by entrepreneurs that are keen to integrate the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals into their business models. Last but not least, the Swedish government has been at the forefront of adopting new technologies. The Swedish government pushed out a widely developed broadband network in the 1990s and rolled out early access to fast internet. Now let me turn to Estonia. Since regaining its independence in 1991, Estonia was looking for a niche to leapfrog and catch up with the rest of the world. Innovation and technology was chosen as the driver. The number of fintech companies established in Estonia increased dramatically in 2017 and 2018, and two-thirds of the fintech companies in Estonia are currently less than 4 years old. For 2019, with 80-plus fintech companies, the projection of fintech companies in Estonia indicates a tripling of their revenues and export over 2018. Now, what are the main reasons for this success story in fintech in Estonia? As a young nation, Estonia may not share Sweden's educational and cultural environment and legacy, but it is nevertheless a technologically advanced country, very much like Sweden. Estonia is one of the highest-ranked countries in Europe for digital access, with around 90% of the population linked to the internet. In a study by the OECD, Estonia was ranked first for the average time spent on the internet, which is about 4 hours. Estonia is also in the top 3 for mobile penetration in terms of mobile broadband subscriptions and average monthly mobile data usage. Importantly, Estonia has a government that has actively embraced new technologies. Estonia is known for its e-governance and e-tax systems, and e-ID too. 95% of personal income tax returns in Estonia, they are filed electronically. The Estonia government also provides a wide range of e-services to its citizens. In particular, Estonia was the first country to offer internet voting back in a nationwide election. When? In 2005. The Estonian finance minister that I met last month told me that in Estonia, once a citizen has input certain data into the government database, into a government apps, they will never have to re-enter the same data again. So that is the sort of e-connectivity that we see in Estonia. I was also told this story, which is actually a true one. Soon after independence, a neighboring country offered to replace Estonia's telephone system to help them update, modify. So what they did was they had a telephone system that they were giving away. And they wanted to give the system and the analog telephone to Estonia. And that was at a time when Estonia had really very limited telephone system. But Estonia was very brave. This sounded a very good offer, but they decided to go digital. That was back in the early 1990s. And that's why they did not end up bogged down by the legacy system that would have been a gift from a neighboring country. And the rest is, of course, history. Now, I would like to come back to Hong Kong and review with you many of the key ingredients that have enabled Sweden and Estonia to be successful in financial innovation. First, like Sweden and Estonia, we are a leading digital economy, consistently achieving top rankings in digital readiness and internet access capabilities. Hong Kong currently, we have 11 submarine cable systems and overland systems. Our broadband networks cover nearly all commercial and residential buildings. And our household broadband penetration rate is around 93%. Estonia was 90. Our mobile penetration rate of 276% is also among the highest in the world. We have free public Wi-Fi service available in most public areas, such as major parks, tourist attractions, and leisure and culture facilities. So we are all fortunate to be living and studying in a city with one of the most sophisticated telecommunications infrastructure in the world. This is the foundation for you to become digitally connected and have global access to ideas and information. Secondly, in terms of education, our government recognized the need to equip our students with the skills required in the 21st century. For fintech specifically, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, they operate the Fintech Center, Fintech Career Accelerator Scheme, which aims to provide practical experience for undergraduate and postgraduate students. and that is done through internships in fintech companies in Hong Kong and in Shenzhen. These initiatives are in addition to the government's pilot program for talent training in the wealth and asset management industry and also in the insurance sector. And these trainings are for existing professionals. And that was rolled out in 2016. 6 of our universities are offering fintech degree undergraduate or postgraduate programs. And here I'd like to encourage all of you to be intellectually curious, whatever degrees you are pursuing, and be mindful of the opportunities, and the word was observant, to be observant of the opportunities brought about by the new economy. Indeed, both formal and informal education are important for gaining knowledge and experience as you develop your career in financial services and fintech. Now, thirdly, like Sweden, Hong Kong is a small and open economy vulnerable to the influence of the external environment. Hong Kong is a place where you can develop an international outlook and perspective. In fact, I'm pleased to know that 1 in 4 university students in Hong Kong, they participate in exchange programs lasting at least 1 semester during their time in university. The government has been operating a new funding scheme on international youth exchange since 2017. And we are also launching the Belt and Road scholarships to encourage outstanding students along the Belt and Road countries to come and pursue studies in Hong Kong. And this provides students in Hong Kong the opportunity to make acquaintances and also understand the cultural and business environment along the Belt and Road. Hence, I encourage all of you to keep abreast of international developments and develop a truly global market. Here, I should add that the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area provides a key driver for Hong Kong to develop innovation and technology with the tech community in Shenzhen and the rest of the Greater Bay Area. Hong Kong universities are very strong in basic research, whereas the tech companies in Shenzhen, for example, they are very good in commercialization of tech ideas and innovations. And this was one of the questions raised just now. So there can be great synergy here, and I encourage you to make good use of such collaboration opportunities. Now, after talking about the 3 factors of tech infrastructure, education, and international outlook and opportunities, let me turn now to our government investment in innovation and technology. While the Swedish and Estonian governments, they had an early start towards digital government and smart city, we, our government in Hong Kong, we have also for some years placed innovation and technology at the very heart of our policy agenda. This administration, we have committed over 100 billion Hong Kong dollars to promoting research and development, nurturing local talent, attracting international expertise, and supporting technology enterprises. These include $10 billion to establish 2 world-class research clusters in the Hong Kong Science Park. One is on healthcare technologies, and the other one is on artificial intelligence and robotics technologies. This initiative has received enthusiastic responses from many top universities around the world. In fintech, the Cyberport community is one of the largest fintech clusters in Asia and is pressing ahead in areas such as insurtech or regtech or regulatory technology and law tech, legal technology. So I would really encourage all of you to take advantage of the many new initiatives in innovation and technology in Hong Kong. Finally, let me share with you 2 international rankings released just this month that reflect Hong Kong's impressive achievements as Asia's world city. In the World Bank's Doing Business 2020 report released just 2 days ago, Hong Kong was ranked 3rd in the ease of doing business out of 190 economies. This puts us behind New Zealand and Singapore and ahead of Denmark and South Korea in the 4th and 5th places. Our high ranking reaffirms our efforts to cut red tape and enhance regulatory efficiency and reflects our favorable environment for business to flourish. Similarly, in the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Report, which was published this month, Hong Kong was ranked third globally among 141 economies, up 4 places from last year and ranked just behind Singapore and the United States. Among the different measures, Hong Kong was ranked within the top 5 for institutions, infrastructure, information and communication technology adoption, and macroeconomic stability. In conclusion, I would note that despite the difficult external and domestic environment, Hong Kong retains its core strengths as an international financial center with an unrivaled geographical location, the rule of law, an independent judiciary, the free flow of information, and a wide pool of professional talents. These took over 1 century to build, with countless hard work, sweats, and tears. We rely on young people like you to safeguard our achievements and efforts built over these years. And I wish you every success as you launch your careers in the near future. Thank you very much.
Would Mr. Lau remain on the stage for the photo shoot? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lau, for the inspiring sharing. And may I now invite Mr. Tim Loy, Chairman of Securities and Future Commission, and Mr. Lawrence Lee, the Chairman of the FSDC, and come to the stage for a group photo. Thank you. Would Mr. Lau and Mr. Lee remain on stage? Now, may I invite all the distinguished panel speakers to come to the stage for our second photo shot. A big thank you to all of our distinguished guests. It would be lovely to have a photo of both our distinguished guests and the hundreds of students here. May the guests step down to the floor again. On behalf of the audience, we would love to have a selfie-like group photo with all of our guests. So if everyone that's seated can stand up for the selfie group photo, that would be very good. Thank you. It'll be very quick. To provide students with more interaction with speakers and market professionals, we now turn to the networking session and CV clinic. They will go concurrently at this venue. Before we flow around, we would like to again express our deepest gratitude to Mr. Lawrence Lee, Mr. Tim Loy, Mr. James Lau, and all the industry professionals for spending their time with us today, despite their busy schedule. Before you leave, I would like to invite you to give your feedback for the event by simply scanning the QR code shown on the wall here. Do follow FSDC Lincoln page once again for the latest update. Now, would the students please take your time to mingle with, learn from the guests. Enjoy. And thanks again for joining and have a good day.